see if we can move that down a little better. That's good.
Welcome back, everybody. This is Night Flight. I'm Judith Grober, and I have a returning guest. Waynejbush is with us today, and we Hi, and we are going to talk about some entrapments on the way, the Archontic problems that we are all facing. How can we finally exit the matrix, not to come back here after we have died, and a lot of those things. So Wayne, welcome to Night Flight.
Hi Judith, well thanks for having me back. I guess this is a continuation of the first interview we did like a month or so ago.
Yeah. Wayne's website is trickedbythelight.com. It's very extensive. Our first interview, he walked us through the entire website. If you haven't seen that interview, do that. So for those people who haven't seen the first interview, just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, about me? Well, I'm 55. I live in Austin, Texas. I've been researching, well, I've been trying to find the meaning of life for most of my life now. And maybe the last 20 years or so, I've been researching very deeply into the phenomenon that we all know about going to the light, the white light at death. Back in the mid 90s or late 90s, probably mid 90s, John Lear was on the Art Bell radio show, and he told Art not to go to the light because it's a trick. And that really piqued my curiosity. So I started looking a lot closer. At the time, I had known about, Life After Life by Raymond Moody, some of the books that are about the near-death experience. And I had kind of bought into it wholesale. It's like, oh yeah, this isn't what religions tell us. The light's, it's all about love and it's all great, and that's where we really go. But then when he said it was a trick, I was like, well, let me investigate that. So that's kind of where I am today. Over the last, I think I put the the website up a little after 2000, maybe 2003 or 4. And it's all about, I named it Tricked by the Light. So I investigate whether that's the case or not.
Thank you for that.
Sure.
And I mean, we are encouraged to go to the light any way you want it, in movies, in music, in symbolism, what have you. So it's pretty convincing. And it takes a little bit of research and digging into the subject to figure it out that might be a deception. And I know you have prepared something for today, so jump right in.
Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen for y'all so that you can partake. Here we go. Okay, so when you sent the email, inviting me back for a second interview, you had mentioned 3 topics that you wanted to cover, and they are how we know that we don't want to come back here, is the first one. Fooling the religions and all the various deities, and then the last topic was leaving the matrix game. So I'm going to cover those 3 topics, and I'm also going to cover a couple of the newest articles that I've written since the last interview, which do tie into those main questions. So, the first question: how do we know that we don't want to come back here? And to be honest, well, first of all, before I get into any of this, let me just kind of give a disclaimer that I don't pretend to know the truth. I don't have the truth. I don't have any special experiences. I just research it. And I do not know. So, I mean, use your own guidance and your own intuition and come to your own conclusions. So now that we have that out of the way, how do we know we don't want to come back here? Well, to be honest, we really don't know for sure. I mean, we don't know the circumstances that before we came here, at least most of us don't. Maybe it's possible that we were bored with perfection as these eternal, all-powerful creative spirits, and maybe we want a challenge, or, then again, maybe we've been created as new souls and there is a need to evolve and grow. we just don't know some of these questions. And I'm hoping that when we die, we'll get some of these, we'll remember more than what we've got these like regulators or governors on our brains. And, you know, we have this memory wipe. And so we just don't have all the answers here. But based on the clues we get from near-death experiences, out-of-body experiences, DMT trips, meditation, and other things like that, I mean, it seems to point to the idea that there's better realms beyond this one. The near-death experiences say that you're able to manifest instantly in that realm, and it's through focused intention. So if that's the case, then why not create a better existence than this one? You know, I mean, some people enjoy life here on Earth, but and maybe they want to come back here if they like the drama and the conflict and the excitement. But I don't understand why anyone would want to come to a place where, you know, we've had your memory wiped, and you literally hear creatures have to kill each other just to survive on a daily basis. So there's this food chain, and we're competing for limited resources. So that's, to me, that's the biggest clue that something's wrong here. Okay. You know, right when you come into the world, the baby starts to cry, you know, immediately. And maybe that's the first, I mean, probably from the bright light and the loud sounds, and who knows, you know, that's kind of the first indication that it might not be good here. And there's this big learning curve here, obviously, where you have to learn how to walk and talk and tie your shoes and everything, you know. And so the vast majority of us here, we struggle, you know, with jobs, with health, relationships, and being happy, you know, due to all the problems we have here, such as the memory wipe, which I mentioned, the ignorance of the big picture or what the truth really is. We have little control over our lives. There's lies and deception everywhere, including politicians and ministers, and there's competition everywhere in the world. There's hatred, prejudice, greed, jealousy. There's a lack of compassion and empathy. There's aging and death, disease all around. You know, we've got bacteria, microbes, parasites living within us. There's starvation, pain and suffering, warfare, natural disasters, financial hardships, job market. I mean, I could just go on and on. There's loneliness and boredom. And we just don't have a lot of control over the way we look, what talents or abilities we have. And there's the day-to-day repetitive routine and grind. And there's these unrealistic expectations that Hollywood and the media has given us. And all this requires to deprogramming and reprogramming ourselves. You know, you got glamour magazines everywhere telling you need to be beautiful and you need to lose weight. So the game seems like it's rigged with only a handful of winners, and the rest of us who bought into the programming, we were wallowing in mediocrity, and we're feeling like losers. So I don't know, there's just a lot of reasons, at least for me. Maybe it's a victim mentality, or maybe I'm a loser. I'm just can't cut it in life, but that's just the way I look at it, especially if you look at some of the deeper, I don't know, people that have had some of these experiences that say that you can create your own reality on the other side. So. Can
I jump in? Can you scroll up a little bit?
Sure. You want to read my comics, don't you?
No. No. Yeah, here. Stop there.
Uh-huh.
Okay. Here, parasites, starvation, pain, suffering, a lot of those things that you have written down there. That is not only going on in the body, it's also going on in the mind field, in the spirit. You know what I mean? You can have etheric parasites, for instance. You can have etheric implants. Your soul can be starving. You can feel pain in your soul. So that is pretty multi-layered here.
Yeah. Well, I'll get a little more into some of that when I get into the deception of the deities and stuff like that, with a little bit of like Calogero. I don't know how to pronounce his name, but I think it's like Calogero Grafasi. He's a hypnotherapist from Italy, and he's through the hypnosis and regression, he's found that a lot of his clients have had these etheric implants in them, that these aliens have implanted. And so I mentioned him a little bit later, but yeah, and then there's back in the Mesopotamia, there's texts that talked about the shades, these shadow entities that feed off of sacrifices and all that. So yeah, it's much deeper than the physical.
The shadow people also came up in another interview with Jerry Musinski. He was working in psychiatry in the prison system and in a large a mental hospital, and he reported that a lot of people that were addicted to crystal meth, they were the ones who started seeing these shadow people, and that they also affected 3D reality.
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly one way they can get in. I think there's other people who just due to stress, if you're overworked and you're not getting enough sleep and stuff like that, then like one of my researcher friends, I mean, he may have done some mushrooms and stuff like that, but I mean, I think it's more than just, you don't have to only do drugs to have the shadow people. I think even if you've raised your frequency or maybe slower your frequency, but there's a lot of people that see him. I mean, heck, nurses, like people that work in hospice homes and stuff like that, they see shadow entities there, like the Grim Reaper and others. So yeah, I think that's the best way they can get to us, though, is through the drugs.
Mm-hmm. Okay, sorry for interrupting. Go ahead.
Oh, that's fine. Okay, so I was going to go on to the next section, the fooling via religions and all the various deities. So, I like to look at language a lot, and so I found out that one of the homonyms or homophones for God is the word God, G-A-U-D, and that word means jest, joke, prank, or trick, fraud, deception. If something's gaudy, it's cheap, or it's kind of, I don't know, it's almost a deception of the real artifact, So Napoleon said, religion is what keeps the poor man from murdering the rich.
Excuse me, your volume is getting low, very low.
Okay, I'll try to talk louder. And we tried with a microphone that I purchased, but it was cutting in and out. So we decided to go with the microphone with my camera. So I'll try to keep the volume up if I can. And then I was researching the different religions, and I noticed that all the prophets from the major religions are princes from the royal family. Krishna was a prince. Buddha was a prince that had 3 palaces. Moses was called the Prince of Egypt because he was raised in the court of the Pharaoh. Jesus was in the line of King David, and he's called King of the Jews and all this other stuff. So, and even I saw an article where Muhammad is related to the Queen. So I found that was interesting that princes from the royal families are the ones that are disseminating the religions for the most part. And so religion can be used to manipulate and control humanity. It's kind of like divide and conquer, and it's a perfect recipe for dividing mankind and pushing us into warfare through holy wars. Why didn't God appear as a hologram for everyone to see all at once on the earth and give us the message? Why would God choose to come down to some man in a cave at different parts of history and give them, conflicting messages? It just doesn't seem like it would be the real truth, and to my thinking. So,
so let us a little bit speculate here.
Okay.
I've been thinking lately if this, we talk about a lot about the true God, the false God, what have you. So I did a little thought experiment, and what if the entire God program is the problem? You know what I mean? I'm not saying there is no creator, But that what the prime creator is something totally different than what is presented to us as God. And that maybe that is an AI cube that is running that God program into various cultures, and that entity might go by different names like Shiva, Allah, Jehovah, what have you. But at the end of the day, it's the same program, just adjusted to whatever is more prominent in that culture or area. Is that something where you could say, I can imagine that, or is that?
No, I think that's exactly the case, at least as far as what we've been told God is here through religions on Earth. And does seem to be sort of an AI, sort of something out of the Matrix, the movie The Matrix, where it's an AI, artificial intelligence. And in fact, the Gnostics kind of talked about that, how they mentioned ionic copies and how Sophia had made a copy of the real, they call them the eternal light realms, or the pleroma. And so that's what we're living in. We're living in, even the Sumerian text talked about this being a matrix and stuff like that. So there are clues, and I was going to go over some of that with some of these religions and those texts. But yeah, I think you're right on when you're saying that it's a program, it's an artificial intelligence. Yeah. I agree.
And what I mean, I give you a statement that is just out there. If you don't have anything to say to that, that's perfectly okay. It is not as if we have rehearsed this. The worship is the worship.
Yeah, worship. Yeah, I get you. It's all about, it's a machine. It has to do with generating war. And in fact, I mean, the goddess of love, they talk about Venus and stuff, but if you go back to the earliest goddesses, she was also a goddess of war, Nana. And so yeah, we're in a duality, so there's two sides to the coin. And yeah, there's also, when you look at the terms that are used in religion, you've got the word pray, P-R-A-Y and P-R-E-Y. And so like one of the things I said was, when the minister says, let us pray, it's like, okay, which kind of praying is he talking about? And who is the us there? He says, let us pray. He's talking about the archons, that are feeding off of the people that are giving him the praise and worship. So yeah.
Yeah, that is like energy sucking as well, and all these, the energy of the prayers, that is like fueling the machine. You know what I mean?
Yeah, everybody seems to think that it's only the negative, they feed off the fear and the doubt and the anger and the war, and that's all very true too, but they also feed off of the praise and adoration and worship. It is giving them energy from that respect also.
Yeah. So, or every time somebody says, oh my God.
yeah, it's a thought form, and that turns into energy, and it's directed towards to God, the probably the false deity, what they call the Demiurge. So so anyway, the first civilization that we know of is the Sumerian one. And so if we look at some of the gods that were in the text, that it was in Oxford that kind of came up with a lot of these texts, and then UCLA put out a text corpus of Sumerian literature that's online that you can search through and read a lot of these texts. But there was these deities such as Nama and Enki and Anu and Enlil, and they all have names and they have stories and lots of dialogues back and forth, during these texts. And so one of the things was saying that the senior gods oversaw the work while the minor gods were bearing the toil, and they were digging the canals, and the gods began complaining about the life. And Nama, who's the primordial mother goddess, told Enki Please apply the skill deriving from your wisdom and create a substitute for the gods so they can be freed from their toil. And so Enki, which a lot of people seem to think is the Demiurge, and very well could be, he was like a scientific genetic engineer. So he fashioned these designs and said to his mother, the creature you plan will come into existence. And so here's one of the Sumerian tablets where I was talking about the matrix. It says, like heaven, I just lost my place. I hope I don't do that a lot. Like heaven itself, your just matrix in which gods too can be born, giving birth to kings who put on the good diadem, giving birth to lords who wear the crown on their heads. That's from Enki in the World Order. But so anyway, Enki said, you know, but yet if you wish, let them not ruin our work. Let's create a human being from the earth according to the image of our body and according to the likeness of this being to serve us. And we shall make those who are born from the light our servants. And then in the Babylonian creation myth, the Enuma Elish, it says, may he shepherd the black-headed ones, his creatures. May he establish for his fathers the great food offerings. So there's all this stuff is in the ancient text if you take the time to read them and pay attention. And Ea said, why are you destroying mankind? They want to give us sacrifices to the gods. They won't burn cedar as incense to you. If you destroy mankind, they will no longer worship the gods. So one of the key figures was Inanna, and she was known as Queen of Heaven. And she was goddess of the underworld, but she also had this net or jailhouse, which was a prison that they talk about in the text. And it says
a net. Did you say net?
A net, yeah, it's like a net. Like in Hindu religion, Indra, the goddess Indra, had a net. And so these text says, when an individual is brought in, he cannot resist its aura. The gods of heaven and earth bow down before its place where judgments are made. Her battle net of fine mesh is indeed cast over the land for her. Says she has provided the prison, the jail, her beloved dwelling with awesome radiance. You know, radiance is light. Another key figure is Nergal, who was the son of Enlil, and he was the god of war and plague. And he had these 7 evil spirits that were given to him. And his temple was originally in Kutha, but then they transported all his worshippers and devotees to Samaria, which is the kingdom of Israel. And I think if you look deeply into, his symbol was the lion. And so when they went to make the flags, the symbols for the flag of Israel and all that, they incorporated the lion into their official emblem and flag. There were these.
There was something very interesting, a little bit up there. Scroll up, please.
Back up. Sure.
Okay, here. The land of Israel is
Ares.
Yeah.
Yes, so that's the word for the land. It's the promised land is pronounced the same as the war god Ares. See, Nergal became the god of war, Ares or Mars. And so literally the land of Israel is Ares. You know, they literally named their land after the war god Ares. And I'm going to, a little bit later when I look at some of the different cultures, but the Bible, the God of the Old Testament, Yahweh, you know, he's always sending plagues and pestilence on the land, and he's killing, like in one text that says 70,000 people, you know, so he's still a god of war, he's still a god of plagues. But yeah, so this Mesopotamian texts talk about the Gala or the Galu, and they were like demons, and they were like equivalent to the shades that I mentioned. But the Galu were great demons or devils of the underworld, and they would haul the victims off to the underworld. And they were talking about Nergal, the dragon supreme, the great god, and they said, to the shades which drink blood in your name. So they're shown that these demons, these shadow beings, will feed off of the, you know, all the sacrificial victims of war and whatnot. So then you get to the Gnostics, and the Gnostics actually called this god out and said that he was a false god, and they called him the Yaldabaoth or the Demiurge. And so I found this meme online, and it's about the Demiurge, and it says what mainstream Christians think I do. And they've got like basically the God in the white robe with the long beard, and he's basically an angel, and he's presiding over everything. And then it says what Gnostic Christians think I do, and they show the architect from the Matrix, right? And what atheists think I do, and they're thinking that God's like sitting there with the popcorn watching this starving child in Africa get eaten by a vulture or whatever. And what I think I do, he's like thinking of himself as some great creator being angel like Metatron or something. And then he says, what I really do is the greatest troll in the universe, which is basically what you were saying earlier, was that, you know, this AI intelligence that's just going amok, right? So the Gnostics said the false god had the face of a lion. And like in the Gnostic text, Pistis Sophia said that she had been deluded through the godlike self-willed and had not been deluded through anything else save through a light power because of its resemblance to the light. So there's the mention of a delusion about how the deities may be, you know, sending us a delusion. A quote from the Secret Book of John says that the Yadabaoth said to the authorities, which means archons, the rulers, come, let us create a human being after the image of God and with a likeness to ourselves, so that this human image may give us light. So they're literally stealing the light from us, the light that's within us. The body's a container of light. So they said, and they fashion their bodies to become fences for the light and become containers of light. So, and it talks about Sophia, the goddess Sophia, she's the goddess of wisdom, but because of her desire, she desired to go up to a higher realm, and this desire produced this being. It was a dragon with a lion's head that we call the Demiurge. And so she surrounded him with a brilliant cloud and put a throne in the center of the cloud. And so he assumed command and created realms for himself with a brilliant flame. So a lot of this parallels what you see in the near-death experience, where a lot of the near-death experiencers, they're in a cloudy place, you know, a misty place, but there's this great light, and some of them see this being is on a throne in the light. The Apocryphon of John says the host of rulers and demons plotted together, and they intended to make man anew, this time from earth, water, fire, wind, which are matter, darkness, desire, the artificial spirit, the artificial intelligence that you're mentioning. Matter of fact, one of the texts says that he was without spirit. This all became...
Who was without spirit?
The Demiurge.
Okay, yeah.
They described him as being without spirit. The Gospel of Philip says God is a man-eater. For this reason, men are sacrificed to him. You know, and in the Bible, even, you know, there's a passage from Isaiah that says, I form the light and create the darkness. I make peace and create evil. I, the Lord, do all these things. So, you know, you have Lucifer and the devil, and Lucifer says, and no wonder for Satan himself masquerades as an angel of light. That's in Corinthians. And, you know, I shouldn't necessarily say that Lucifer is the same as Satan, but he gets equated in a lot of places, especially Hollywood.
Yeah.
You have the story of Job, right, where God and the devil are literally making a bet. This poor guy Job, you know, he's like following, you know, the Lord God or whatever, and Satan just says, well, he's just doing that because, you know, everything's going great for him, you give him what he wants. And so they make a bet, and so God sends all these plagues and stuff. So I mean, are we just pawns for their amusement, you know? And in the Old Testament, you know, supposedly there, you know, God has a chosen people, you know. It's like, why would God favor one of his people over another, you know? And then God tells Abraham to sacrifice his son and all this stuff. You know, the angels, such as the Archangel Michael, is a warrior with a sword. I mean, why are these angels warriors with swords? You know, it's just, it all feeds into the duality of it. You know, there's love, but in light, there's also the darkness.
Mm-hmm. 1 second. When you are talking, I hear a noise in the background.
Okay, it's probably my chair squeaking.
Okay, because it sounds as if somebody is packing for moving.
Oh, no, I don't know. I don't know what that noise is. Huh.
No.
I'll try to be quiet with my chair there.
Okay.
It's a little WD-40 maybe. So then you have the divine right to rule, you know, where these Anunnakis, and you notice all these words that begin with A, you know, you've got Anunnaki, archons, aliens, archangels. To me, they're all the same entities that can take any shape or form they want. But so there's this divine right to rule of the so-called kings, right? So they, and in the Old Testament, this God Yahweh, he wiped out mankind, 70,000. And of course, he was going to send the flood to wipe out all of mankind except for his chosen few. But here's some verses, there are just tons of them in the Bible where he talks about sending pestilence on the people. There's the one where it says, and there died of the people from Dan 70,000 men. There's just, it's not, it seems like a God of love in the Old Testament, at least. But really, the God of the Old Testament was more of a composite of various deities. You know, it wasn't necessarily just Nergal or Enlil or whatnot. It's just kind of a composite.
Yeah, another thing that is puzzling, the word Lord has been slapped all over the place, and it is not always talking about the same deity.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's also very close to the word lard. I mean, Jordan Maxwell talks about, you know, Lord, lard, and the fat of the crocodile and all this other stuff. And it all ties in. So, so there's also this recent development where people under the drug DMT, the psychedelic DMT, they see a lot of these deities that we're talking about, you know, Hindu deities, Egyptian deities, Mayan, Aztec deities, and one of the common entities that they see is the jester, and others are these self-transforming machine elves. But you know, you look at these deities. I mean, look at the Mayans and the Aztecs and stuff like that. I mean, if they were seeing these deities or gods from, you know, psychedelic substances such as like mushrooms or DMT, why all of a sudden are they sacrificing thousands of people, sometimes in a day, you know, atop these pyramids? You know, it's a god of sacrifice. He's telling them to sacrifice people. I mean, that doesn't seem like a good thing for us, at least. There's the picture of them sacrificing. You know, DMT Nexus is a website where you can read a lot of these experiences. Another one I go out to almost on a daily basis is a subforum on Reddit called DMT. And it's not too uncommon for people they'll see a jester, or sometimes people will say they felt like the entity was operating on them or feeding off of them. I have to say, though, that most of the people that take DMT, they say it's a very positive experience. You know, they realize, it wakens them up to realize that there's more than just this physical reality. So I don't want to, you know, be a fear monger and say it's all negative.
I think it also has a lot to do with your own mindset.
Yeah. Whether you're going to it, like the setting and all that stuff, whether it's a recreational thing that you want to do or whether you want to take it for spiritual purposes. Absolutely. So there's this not progressive rock band, but like a modern rock band called Tool, and they did some videos with Alex Grey. Alex Grey is this visionary artist, and he's very well known with a lot of his art pieces, people, especially in the DMT and psychedelics realm. But he collaborated with Tool to do some videos, and one of the ones they did was called Vicarious, and the words talk about how they vicariously live through us, and the video shows these ticks and leeches and octopuses and stuff inside of the being. So now we get into NDEs, which is another place where you can see that there's maybe some deception going on. Like I mentioned before, there's a being of light on throne, and to me that seems like it's a power trip, you know, to establish authority over somebody when they go there. Like this one says, I looked at the throne and I was light in the face of a bear, eagle, lion, and ram, all changing every second. And this being, he had teeth like a piranha. And another one said, I found myself suddenly very high up in a bright white room, and there were several beings there. There was a being on a throne, and there was others sitting down. And so eventually he sees that they're very white or chalky looking, and he thought that these were the gray aliens and maybe the gods or religious type beings that, you know, we've come to worship over time. Another one said, I observed him as he was so surely to hold onto the doorknob of this particular room door as he came out backwards, and noticed his countenance having what appeared to be a long robe on, which you could clearly look through him, and the gold belt he had on. Plus, looking at his face, which scared the living crap out of me, he had the face of a lion. And that's exactly the way the Gnostics described the Demiurge, was the head of a lion and the body of a serpent. And so even in these some near-death experiences, I found like 2 or 3 dozen where there's aliens in them. This one in particular, Ruth, where she said, I was taken to special entities who looked like the usual grays, but they had lots of wrinkles on their faces. They called themselves the Council and said they were part of a group called Soul Recyclers, helping souls to reincarnate. There's another one down here where he says, I was taken to see a worm working controls of big cylinders that had every animal and peoples you could think of. And they were going down the cylinders from adults to babies, fish also. As I was walking towards the worm, I heard a voice say, you go back and be a better man. I was told by many the light was the creator God and the worm was an angel giving rebirth. There's a lot of cases in the near-death experiences where the entities with the light can change form. There's one in particular where this guy sees the Virgin Mary. He says, yeah, I saw the light approach. I was enveloped by the light, and an entity that wants to prepare me for what I call my interview with the Supreme Being later in the light. This first being appeared to be the Virgin Mary. Only after asking, are you truly the Virgin Mary? It instantly manifested true identity. I was nearly paralyzed with fear until asking again, please, what is happening to me? What's going on here? So, you know, they claim that, you know, they'll take a form to make us feel comfortable. But I mean, hey, if they can take any form they want, that shows that there is a possible deception that can be done. So that a lot of times they're forced to go back against their will. You know, there's this cliche saying, it's not yet your time, right? You know, some are given the choice to stay or go, but we don't really know. I mean, maybe they just are under that illusion that they had the choice, because they always end up coming back, because we would never hear from the ones that go on. There's this one by Miguel where the angel Gabriel was like saying, hey, you have to go back. There's a mission for you to accomplish. And he's like, no, I'm not going back. I'm not leaving. And then they, you know, they show him, he makes a gesture with his hand. And then, you know, he sees his wife there with his children, and they show him to like a poor district, and, you know, what a life will be like, you know, if he doesn't go back, you know, they're starving and having a rough go of it. Eventually you know, he hears this voice, you know, and he says, who's this speaking? And he says, I am the true and faithful witness. You have to go back. Jesus? He said, yes, you must go back. And he's like, I'm ready, Lord, thy will be done. So they're like trying different things, you know, here's a picture of your wife. She's going to be in bad shape. And that wasn't enough to do it, but, you know, the angel wasn't enough to convince him. But man, if he hears the voice of Jesus, he's ready to go. So, you know, in the UFO literature, there's so much of it, but Truman Cash is one of the ones that comes to my mind, where he talks about he had this experience in the white light amnesia room that he talks about with, he said 2 insectoids approached him and told him that he, you know, was ready to begin his new life. And he sees that it's an implant station, this big space station. And so he's basically saying, don't go to the light. I was right. It's a new age light. It's part of the trap, you know. Then they're like almost programming him with these beams and saying, hey, always return to the light, always return to the light.
Yeah, and that is probably why they are being told to consume all this light during meditation. And that way, yeah, as I said, sorry, that is like drug taking. You consume all this light that does not have its roots in yourself, and then you sit there, and yes, you do have experiences, and you bliss out, and you are getting high, and yeah.
Yeah, one of the drugs called ecstasy is called the love drug, and it literally puts you in an ecstatic state, and it's really not much different than, you know, the blissed out love state that the near-death experiencers talk about while they're in the midst of this so-called love, this love that, you know, sends them back, you know, to earth to suffer more and more. So, you know, even in the field of out-of-body experiences, where we talked about Robert Monroe in the first interview and the loosh, and he was saying that we were producing something of value, loosh, and it's an energy generated by all organic life. And so he felt that the highest of such emotions they found out was love. And so they decided to build a garden and grow loosh. So, you know, he talks a lot about the loosh and even equates, he talks about the white light and an emitter also. He's just got some really interesting things in his books. Talks about a smart transmitter propagating certain waves, and he goes, if other related vibrations of like kind to form a multiple pattern, which if as thought of as light would be white. So there's a lot of connections there. Another one I found was this guy named Jürgen Zive. He's had out-of-body experiences or lucid dreams, and he, in some of his really deep dreams, he saw how it was so easy for people to be seduced and ensnared by these grand designs. And he said, how many people I thought understand that they have the power to rise above and observe these thoughts for what they are, temporary, giving us the illusion that we're in control. And he said he was fascinated by it, and they stood out like grand edifices singing the glory of their creators, many of them hypnotized by their beauty and artistic perfection. And he says it was driven by a powerful engine at its center, which was nothing less than a gigantic star sitting at the top of a magnificent dome for everyone to see. Inside the dome, millions worshipped it like their god. And here's the hypnotherapist I mentioned earlier, Kalahiro Grafasi. And one of the regressions, and I have like 6 or 7 I posted on one interview, but this one, the guy's got this implant, a chip in him, like you were saying, and it says it's monitored by a control panel on a spaceship inside an underground reptilian base hidden like a huge nest inside craters on the backside of the moon. He said that lizards built the base, and the commander of the base resides very far away in Draco by a very large dragon. And this dragon controls 14 different civilizations and uses them for investigation and energy supply, energetic nourishment. And then...
And we can go back a little bit. And 5 places in Jupiter's orbit help to control Earth. I am not surprised.
yeah, and obviously he said artificially teleported here from the orbit of Saturn, which has a generator within it. And of course, you know, I was talking about Pan in the last interview we did, and I think even after the interview I found out that Pan is actually a moon of Saturn, and so it's not surprising that all that fits in. And of course the Saturn, I think it used to be spelled with a Y, S-A-T-Y-R-N is an alternate spelling, and the Satyr is the goat that plays the flute, and he's, you know, basically Pan, the god of the forest. It all ties in. And so like in Hollywood and in Wicca today, you can see the same agenda in music and in the movies and in media. And so I've written these articles about Disney, since they're one of the most powerful corporations. And so I was going to kind of show a little bit of those articles that I'd written. This one is the new one right there that I mentioned to you earlier. But here's the one about the fairy tales. And so it's important, well, in fairy tales, a maid or maiden nymph with supernatural help of natural elementals can resurrect or change into a queen, princess, or goddess. And it's the worship of the goddess in the form of nature, typically the earth and moon. In Wicca, the earth goddess is Persephone, Kor, Circe, or Demeter. And of course, the Demeter is DMT. Look at those letters, and the DMT people that talk about Iowa or the mother goddess, and it's like an earth goddess. Anyway, the moon goddess is Diana, and then Isis is also a moon goddess, but that's Venus. So it's important when you watch these Disney movies that you pay attention to the names, and they're usually representing Ceres or Demeter or Isis. But so it's a maiden representing the new moon, a mother representing a crescent moon, or a crone representing the full moon at the time of harvest. And so if you look at the names of these moon goddesses, you have Selena, you have Diana, Luna, Gwen or Wendy is a variation. Inanna, the Babylonian Ishtar, Freya, Isis, Aphrodite, the Roman Venus, and the Catholic Mary even. And also later the church identified Lucifer as Venus. And so both Venus and Lucifer are called the morning star. And so the triple aspect of the moon that I was mentioning earlier. But anyway, one of the first movie that Disney put out was Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. And before releasing that, they had these little animated shorts. And the Snow White movie was based on a character called the Goddess of Spring from 1934. And the Goddess of Spring is based on the myth of Persephone and also on a myth involving Freya and 4 dwarfs that I talked about. So
do you think that all these goddesses, for instance, that this is one and the same deity just morphing into a slightly different type and getting a different name according to what culture she's?
Yeah, as you go from culture to culture, they all have their own language, and so they all have a name. Oftentimes the words sound similar, but other times they don't. They want to recreate it, make it their own. And yeah, they do have the ability. It's the same goddess or the same gods. They take, like, say, Enki could maybe like Hermes or Mercury or Thoth or Loki. I mean, they could have different identities throughout the different cultures. But of course, they do have the ability to shapeshift too. So they could take some discrepancies in their forms as well. So there's a Snow White, and like I mentioned, from the Goddess of Spring, and let me do a search here real quick. So anyway, I go through pretty much all the different Cinderella, Snow White, what is it? Beauty and the Beast. There was another one I'm forgetting, but you can all trace their name back to these original fairy tales. And oftentimes, like Cinderella was from Cindy or Cynthia, and every single one of them, their name corresponds to one of the appellations of Isis or Venus. And then they talk about the morning star in almost all these movies, and they even sing about it sometimes, like in what is the movie? I think The Frog and the Princess or something like that. It starts out with a song about the evening star. They're showing the evening star up there, and the father of the princess, Tatiana, says, make a wish upon that star. And they're constantly saying, when you wish upon a star, and like Pinocchio and these, Peter Pan, they're talking about the second star to the right, and he's like, there it is, Wendy, this, and they're literally telling you in the movies, like at the end of the movie, Frog and the Princess, like there's this frog, and he looks up and sees the star, and he calls it Evangeline, and he's in love with it. And then at the end of the movie, he goes up to be next to the star, and it shows that the star is like the second star on the right is the same one as in Peter Pan. And so they're literally, and in this movie, they're saying that it's the morning star, and the morning star is Venus. So there's just no doubt about it.
There's also a Bible verse where Jesus says, "I'm the morning star."
Right. That's, yeah, Jesus and Lucifer and Venus, they're all called the morning star. But Venus is also called the evening star. Mm-hmm. So a lot of these plays and operas and stuff like that, they also, like, specifically like the Magic Flute and stuff like that, they talk about Osiris and Isis within it, all within the context of a secret society and everything. So and then this latest article I wrote up above here is the hidden symbolism and meaning of Disney Magic Kingdom, and it all ties in with these Wagner operas and the Swan Princess. But let me just click on it real quick and show you. But so, like, Disney is selling the idea of magic, and more specifically the idea that dreams can come true if you only believe in them, right? And so it's like, that's what it gets us, it programs us to reincarnate, because a lot of times if you don't achieve your dreams, then you want to come back and do that, right? So but the dreams are specifically about marrying a prince, right, or being with a princess, and when those dreams are like 1 in a gazillion chance of ever that happening for somebody. But Walt Disney was saying that you can design and create and build the most wonderful place in the world, but it takes people to make the dream a reality. all our dreams can come true if we have the courage to pursue them. When you're curious, you find lots of interesting things to do. He says Disneyland will never be completed. It will continue to grow as long as there's imagination left in the world. And so that's what this, you look at some of the different myths, like the Gnostics were Sophia, it was because of her desire that she created the Demiurge and fell into matter. And then in the Greek mythology, you have Pandora, who opened the box because of her curiosity, and all the evils of the world came out. And then, you know, you have the curiosity killed the cat, right? But there was another, I can't remember, there was another major myth like that where it all has to do with curiosity and I can't remember, it's escaping my mind right now. But so I was looking,
come back when you don't think about it.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, but I had already written the article about, you know, Venus is in all these Disney movies as the, you know, the queen, and the princess is all this, you know, wishing upon a star and all this stuff. And I was thinking, man, what about the Disney castle? I wonder why they have a castle and what's so symbolic? What does it represent? And so when I did a research, it was based on the design of this castle called the Neuschwanstein Castle in Bavaria, and that means new swan stone. And anyway, when I looked into the myth that it was about, it was called this mountain of Venus was called Venusberg, and that's what this castle was sitting atop this mountain, or was identified with this mountain. And so it goes on back to this Hulda, the goddess of spring, who later became identified with Venus, the pagan goddess of love. And Venus had these sirens and nymphs, and you know, it says Venusberg is the magical realm of fairies presided over by the goddess Venus. And so, you know, Walt Disney was really intrigued by the operas of Wagner, and this, you know, that's why he based the Cinderella Castle and the Snow White Castle on this ancient castle, which itself in turn was modeled after the castle in the Wagner operas. And Wagner, when he more specifically Tannhäuser and Lohengrin. And in these operas, there's the Wish Upon a Star, you know, of the castle. And even Disney came out with these 6 or 7 movies about the Swan Princess, right? And so, and that goes back to this Grail lore about, you know, in the first opera I'd mentioned, Lohengrin, it's about the Swan Knight, and there's a swan that drags the boat, you know, across the water to save this damsel that's in distress, this maiden. And in the other opera I was talking about, it's called Tannhäuser, and it's about Venusberg. I mean, matter of fact, the very first act is called Venusberg in the libretto, that if you download it and look at it. But it's all about the rapturous love that Tannhäuser feels for the goddess of love. And he feels like a prisoner, and he longs for suffering again, so he can feel the breeze and hear the songbirds again. But while he's in the midst of Venus, he's just in that euphoria that you were talking about. You know, he says, matter of fact, one of the highlights of the opera is when they sing the aria. It's called Song to the Evening Star. Here's the German. It's like, O du mein holder Abendstern. And it says the title relates to, oh, my gracious evening star. It says, the soul that longs for the highest grounds, you are the loveliest star. But anyway, the libretto says that the stage represents the interior of the Venusberg, and the principal characters being sirens and Venus. And she's got this silver mask that she wears. But these sirens, it starts out with these sirens saying, come to the shore, come to the land, where in glowing love's fond embrace, blessed balm shall soothe your longings. And so Tannhäuser's, you know, he says it's in a dream, and he can't measure the time that he's been there. And, you know, he says, she's like talking about the sweet wonders that her love is lavished upon him. But, you know, he's getting tired of the rapture, and he starts longing for the joys of, I don't know, he calls it suffering, you know, it's crazy that, you know, but he says, I remain mortal, and your love overwhelms me. And I have a heart not pleasure alone, and in my joy long for suffering. So from your kingdom I must flee. Oh, God has set me free. You know, he says, I'll have all this bliss. He says, my heart yearned, my soul thirsted for joy, for divine pleasure, and your love overwhelms me. Though a God can savor joy forever, I'm subject to change, so I long for suffering. And he talks about, forever blessed is he who's dwelt here, hot with desire and the divine glow, and the wonders of your realm cast a spell, and the magic of unalloyed bliss. But he says he longs for the breezes and the skies and the sound of bells and all this other stuff that's back on earth. So, but she's like saying, hey, a feast of joy shall spring from our union. Let us gladly celebrate the rite of love, revel in union with love's own goddess. But he says, with you, I can only be a slave. I'm consumed with longing. And for freedom, I thirst to strife and struggle. So he goes back to earth. And they literally, the shepherd says, Dame Hulda came forth from the hill. And then there's this little segment where they're going back and forth, and he says, let us make peace and let me go my way. And they're like, not yet. You must not go. We will not let you go. And he says, let me go. And he's like, we will not let you go. I must get away from here. It's like the song Bohemian Rhapsody, which was a rock opera that was written by Freddie Mercury of Queen. And I swear I've seen in 2 different operas. If you look at the Magic Flute, there's a scene at the very beginning. He says, is this the real life? Is this just fantasy? That's almost like straight from that opera. And then here, this thing about going back and forth, let me go. No, we won't let you go. Let me go. It's from this opera here. So I'm pretty sure that's where Freddie got a lot of his inspiration from. So then later in it, they're singing about how may your stars shine on us, and how the single star up in the heavens which shines. And, it's like, I would sacrifice myself. And then the people think he went to hell and he's possessed, and he's like, he was in the Venusberg, the hell of Venus. And so it's just interesting that one of Wagner's most famous operas is all about the allure of Venus and the goddess of love, and how he's just enraptured by her, radiance and everything. So, there was this other thing about, the new Schwanstein being the new swan, and the Cygnus is the constellation of the swan. And they found there's this black hole at the center, it's called Cygnus X1. And there's this other source of radiation that beams out rays toward us, and it's called Cygnus X3. And it's just very interesting that even Disney made a movie called The Black Hole, where this ship wants to go beyond the black hole, but it gets sucked into the black hole. And the name of the ship is Cygnus, So it's a very deep symbolism with, of course, Mother Goose, it's that you think about a black hole or a void, it could be like the matrix or a womb of a mother goddess, where anything can be created if you wish it or desire it to come into reality. Right there, it's possible. So there's this group called Rush, and they had this song called Cygnus X1, where they talk about that black hole of Cygnus. And then on their next album, Hemispheres, it's really great. I mean, the music's not so great, especially for Rush, but the lyrics are some of the best I've ever seen, where there's this, the gods, love and reason are fighting between each other to rule the fates of man. And so Apollo brings to them wisdom, and then Dionysus brings love, but they're without a balance between the two, they find themselves in peril, right? And so finally he comes, they dub him Cygnus, the bringer of balance, right? Because he says, I have memory and awareness, but I have no shape or form. As a disembodied spirit, I'm dead and yet I'm born. And so he talks about the chaos seizing, and they said, we will call you Cygnus, the god of balance you will be. And it's all about the hemispheres. It's on the album, The Hemispheres. And it has to do with the hemispheres of the brain, right? The right and the left, and one rules over love and the other over logic. So, I don't know, that's sort of my new article that I had written just a few days ago. I posted it. So if you look at the agenda of all these things about religions being deceptive, I think it's dangerous, because at death, if we truly create our own reality based on our intentions, then if it can convince us that we're going to meet our maker at death, and be judged for our wrongdoings. I mean, let's face it, you can't live 75, 80, 90 years and not make mistakes left and right, you know, especially when you're being provoked from everybody. Or if they convince us that we need to perfect ourselves and atone for bad karma, then we can easily be convinced that we need to return to Earth, especially by an entity pretending to be God or a religious figure. And if you look at like even the hypnotherapy sessions of like Michael Newton, where he takes clients between lives, you know, supposedly these guides will then, you know, help guide us on what form to choose next. You know, if you go back to in order to grow, you know, they're there to guide us, so that we're easily just kind of manipulated and told that we have to go back, you know, again. And I think it's a lot of that has to do with because of the religion and what they tell us. I don't know. Did you have anything to add before I go on to the part about leaving the matrix?
I think there are a lot of people who are really done here, and they feel it deep down. And as for me, I can definitely say this is my last round. I'm not coming back. I have had it. And if you really, if it's not only a construct in your mind, but you really feel it in yourself, then I'm pretty sure that you will not come back, and you will be aware of the tricks and the life reviews and all the things that they try to lure you in, and that will mean nothing to you.
But how many people in this world know about you or me or this website or this, I guess if you want to call it a movement, or this knowledge that about the light being a trick, or there's being these archons that are lying to us or whatever? I mean, most people, you know, what is 80–90% of the planet, you know, believes in one of the 4 or 5 major religions that are all telling us that, you know, we're going to be judged by God when we die, or that we have to keep coming back over and over and over again until you're perfect. And it's like, you know, who's going to be perfect after a lifetime like this, you know? So those people have bought into that paradigm, and so yeah, they're going to be easily told.
Yeah, and you have also very distorted ideas around that. I mean, if you really fall for that narrative that you please a god if you go out and kill a certain number of people because they have a different god, then I mean there is something really wrong with you.
Most people probably aren't aware that we have the ability to create reality with our imagination, with our thoughts. I mean, it's most of the near-death experiences don't even talk about that. You know, they go through the tunnel and into the light, and then they're just kind of shepherded around almost against their will. Like, you know, they're in front of this huge being of light on a throne, and, you know, this power play. You know, we're associated here back on Earth, thrones with kings and authority. And so, yeah, they're just going to submit, you know, whereas if you've looked deeper into it and you realize that some of these people that necessarily didn't go through the tunnel and into the light, but if you can manifest something instantaneously, teleport yourself anywhere you want to be, all of a sudden the rules of the game are completely changed, and you have hopefully power and sovereignty to do what you want.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah,
I think those people who are totally unaware or so convinced that they will meet their maker, that these are the easiest to recycle, especially if they are convinced that they only have one shot here.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So, you know, if we choose that we want to leave the matrix, which I certainly have, and I know you probably have too. So what are some of the things we can do? I think we should spend a lot of our time like preparing for that time when we die. And so some things that can maybe help you are meditation, practicing lucid dreaming, to where you start becoming aware and taking control over your dreams and maybe even reality down here. out-of-body experiences, certain psychedelics, you know, possibly mushrooms or DMT, if you want to understand that what we're in right now is not, you know, everything there is, that there's a base reality behind it all. So raise your frequency as much as possible, you know, with positive thinking, you know, avoid all the negativity. And I think meditation and just contemplating about the truth can help do that. Let go of the fear and regret, remorse, forgive everyone that's wronged you, and also ask forgiveness, so that, you know, it's about just letting go and not having any grudges or attachments or ties to earth.
When you talked about lucid dreaming, did you ever experience sleep paralysis?
One time, yeah. It's pretty terrifying. Yeah, you can't even scream or move or anything. It's horrible.
I experienced that as well, not only once, but I have to say I didn't feel fear. I was not scared. The only thing, yeah, let's put it this way, I felt annoyed because I couldn't move.
Yeah. You feel powerless. Yeah, it's a horrible feeling. So you can do affirmations and revoke any of the soul contracts that you may have made and say that they're null and void. I don't know if you can actually do that. I've done that, and I'm still here, you know. So I think, you know, once you made your life contract to come down here, it's an agreement, and you're put in sort of this prison, these body cells and gravity, and there's just really hardly any way out until death, when the silver cord gets severed, and then you're kind of free at that point. So I think it'd be smart to like just make a bucket list of things that you've always wanted to do and do them, you know, so that get all your experiences out of the way so you don't have any regrets or desire to do them. Eliminate any and all emotional attachments, including love. That's a big one. Get rid of all addictions, drugs, sex, food, money. Try to purify your thoughts and intentions and do acts of loving kindness with others. Do a mock life review and try to remember events in your life that angered you, and especially where you were emotionally attached, like you were cried or you were hurt, and just keep repeating that review until you no longer have any reaction to it. You know, this is just sort of just in case you end up going to the light and you do have a life review, you know, that you won't be manipulated by it. You know, it's good to have contingency plans. So have a detailed exit strategy or escape plan of your intentions with contingencies thought out before you die. Or if you choose to go to the light, prepare on how you would answer certain questions about your life. If your plan is to create a new reality of your choice or go to a realm that you have in mind, then write up a very specific description of this reality and try to phrase it in an all positive way. So like if you're on the internet and you search for everything but murder and grisly scenes of, you know, whatever, what's going to come up when you do the search? They're going to show you a bunch of murder pictures and stuff. You know, it's all, it's like it could be a topical search, you know. So, you know, try to phrase it in a positive way. So instead of saying, you know, I want to go to a place where there's no death, you know, don't use the word death. Say live as long as I like, you know, that kind of thing. So if you're going to go to the void and your intention is to have a plan maybe to clear your thoughts and feelings, because the void could be, it could be clear light, it might be darkness, it might even be a balance of light and dark. And I've said in the past that setting one's intention with an internal mantra of like higher frequency now may be a good option, but I'm not so sure that you would want to use the word frequency anymore, because I'm not sure, because frequency implies vibration, and movement may result in the creation of space and time, since it's a displacement or change.
And you know what? This demand or raise your frequency, that has this hierarchical connotation to it, and that all hierarchies are Archontic by nature.
And dimensions. Like my thinking is like, you know, like if it's like a 0 point, like one dimension would be like a spot, I guess. 2 dimensions or maybe a line would be 1 dimension. 2 dimensions would be like a plane, right? Is this making sense? 3 dimensions would be like a cube, I guess. And then 4 dimensions and beyond, you're just getting deeper and deeper into more length and width and height, and then another component, and you may just be getting deeper and deeper into the creation of it all. Where as if you go back to like a 0 point, you're completely outside of space and time, and maybe that's the void, and that may be better than I'm going to go to a higher dimension or a higher frequency, and all that implies movement. And so I'm not sure that advice that I've been given in the past is technically correct. You're probably better to stay away from scientific terms because we really don't understand it all. Even Einstein and those guys were saying they didn't.
That is something that I would definitely not do. You could alternatively focus your intention on safety or truth. I'm okay with that. Calling upon Jesus or the Holy Spirit or the Divine Mother are good options if you find yourself in a bad situation. No, no fucking way.
Well, I'll tell you this much. I mean, I did get an email from a woman who she was basically an atheist. She didn't believe in a God or any existence after death. And when she died, she found herself in sort of like a void, and she was being taunted and tormented by demons. And it was just ridiculous because they were tormenting over little stuff that, like she didn't hold a door open for somebody when she should have, when they could have easily done it themselves. Stuff like that. It was just nonsensical stuff. And they were tormenting her. And the only way she got out of it was she finally was determined enough, like, no, this is not right. This doesn't make sense. And so she kind of took her own power. But this goddess of some other goddess kind of reached down and helped her out of it. I'm just saying, as a very last resort, if you're in a hell place and you don't have it within your power to overthrow these demons, then I would certainly call upon the light or Jesus or the Holy Spirit. But to me, that's like last resort.
Yeah, and that is exactly, who needs saving? The victim. Yeah. So you are
having that doubt in your mind is not a good thing, because it shows that you got a weakness that you need to work on. But I'm not saying you. I'm saying if a person has that doubt, then.
And I'm not saying this lady didn't have that experience, but I'm pretty sure that entire thing was a setup.
Yeah.
You go in and torture her, and I make sure she's back in the game. I help her out.
No, she's still alive today, so she is back in the game. But she is aware of my website now, so hopefully she has a better idea next time what to do. So I'd say execute that plan immediately upon death, and like I said, avoid using words completely, because our language has been so. I don't know, so much mind control involved in it and manipulation. So
it has been corrupted.
Yeah, so use like mental pictures or pure ideas, like pure intention or pure imagination, pure awareness, and maybe it might be okay to think about goodness or truth or some ideal, but just don't use words. So
it is really sad that we have been conditioned to think that we could not deal with a situation like that ourselves, because it is not that hard to overcome such an attack. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I think we should always do as much thinking for ourselves as possible and not adopt beliefs, especially of systems, whether they're political systems or religious systems. I mean, just do what the herd does, the Christians or, Muslims or whatever. It's a lot of it's based on the location and your parents and how you were brought up. I mean, 99% of the people that are Muslims that are in that region of the world, if they were born over here in America, or these Americans that are Christians, if they were born in a place where they're totally surrounded by Muslims and their parents, they would totally be believing the opposite of what they believe now, So, I think it's best to seek your own truth. Which takes a lot of work. People have a lot on their plates, with jobs, and they get tired, and it's very difficult to do, and you have to do it.
Yeah, so, that's also part of the program. We try to wear you out so that you have no time left.
It's very effective. It really is. So, so the other thing I was saying was like kind of avoid entities, avoid spirits that may impersonate loved ones or friends, avoid spirits that may impersonate deities or religious figures, but do not be scared of any of these entities. They have no power over you. They could be external projections from within, figments of your own imagination. And the Tibetan Book of the Dead talks some of that. If you cannot will them away, then you do have abilities such as teleportation, super speed, invisibility, shields of protection. So, I mean, I think the power is within ourselves, and that's all we have to do is believe in it. And, you know, in some ways, Disney has some of it right, but they've got you dreaming about coming back here to the physical, you know, when you have the power of imagination to go to much better places than what's here. So I think that's pretty much everything I wanted to touch on. I don't know if you had anything else that you wanted to mention or ask, but.
I would say no, or it's on.
What's that? Say no or it's on?
Say no or it's on.
You mean no to the light?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do think we do have the ability to choose not to go to the light. I mean, I know that a lot of the people, they feel like they were drawn there and just kind of pulled there, but I think that's once their curiosity was intrigued, you know, they see that light and they're like, oh, they make like a subconscious decision to want to go there. Whereas if, you know, and it takes a while for that light to appear. I mean, it's not like a long time, but there's a bit of time that when you're there in the darkness or the void, or it's your true nature, your awareness, and right then and there, I think that's why it's good to have a plan, so that you don't get pulled by these entities, if assuming they do have some power over you. But I kind of think that you have to make that choice to go there, and so I'm not going to choose to go there whatsoever. But I think it's smart to remain flexible, and maybe you remember more than the memory we have here. I mean, it's one thing I've thought of recently is if you're an eternal spirit with like all this infinite power almost, maybe you do get bored out there, you know, and maybe coming here to Earth, I mean, I've heard that there's a long line. These spirits want to come to Earth because, I mean, it's more challenging, and if you can have anything you want instantaneously over there, then what's the fun in that? So maybe they purposely limit themselves, you know. I don't know. So I think it's important to be flexible and open-minded, but to me that's like a last resort. I think it's a lack of imagination. I mean, like you can think of and do anything you want supposedly while you're in that realm. So you can certainly think of a better place than this. I mean, it's just crazy. I mean, I could understand.
But it's an easy food resource.
Yeah. That's another thing I've heard is that, like, you know, if you think you're just going to hang out in some void forever and never have to have a physical form or anything, I've heard that it's possible that your energy starts to dissipate, and that at some point, I don't know, but I don't really buy that, because I think if you're not moving, that's why I'm stressing being still and not having this movement, because that movement requires energy, you know, time and space, and that energy is going to, maybe because of all the movement, maybe that's when you start to lose it. If you're just still, maybe you wouldn't. So
I think that is a funny story to make us feel pity for them.
Yeah, could be. I don't know. That's the thing, as I just do not know, and that's why I'm going to say, you know, maybe I'll have a better memory of why I came here, whether I was tricked or convinced, or whether I was just bored and decided to come here. I mean, I'm going to play it by ear, but I do have this plan right now based on my limited knowledge. So.
Yeah, we all have to a certain degree limited knowledge. Some have a little bit more, some have a little bit less, but it doesn't matter at the end of the day. It's not that, you know, you get an A, you get an B. The thing is, what do you want? Set your intention and be aware that you are infinite. You are a multi-dimensional being and you are infinite.
I certainly hope that is the case. I have heard on one or two occasions, and even the Gnostic texts talk about the creation of souls, and that's what they would like to convince us to believe, is that, hey, you were created as a new soul, and you got to learn and grow and evolve. And of course, that involves millions and millions of years, and lifetimes, maybe even starting out as like a molecule, mineral or something, then you become vegetable, plant, or whatever, and then an animal, and then a human, and then a plant. I mean, when does it end? When is enough enough? I mean,
you know what? All of that is existing at the same time. Meaning, meaning because you are multi-dimensional, we all are, whether we know it or not. You can be a stone, a flower. Here you are waynejbush,
right.
And somewhere else you are a planet in a star system, but all of that is happening at the same time. It's not like, you go through this grinding machine where, okay, now I have that step I used to be.
Yeah, I think there's many levels to it, and I think we can zoom in. Like right now, we've zoomed in very, I'm me and you're you and they're them, and we all these different roles or personalities. But I think you can also zoom out to the very biggest picture, where everything is maybe one. I mean, maybe we are God. We're just doing different roles in this grand drama, which is a dream of God or awareness. It's like an author that sits down, he writes a movie or something like that. He's got all these different characters in mind, and he's like, okay, this character is going to do this action, and this character is going to do that action, this character is going to say this, and this character is going to say that. And maybe that's what it's all about, is I'm a character, you're a character. But if you go zoom back out, you're that one creator that created everything, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course. The drama is full on here, because this is the only universe where you confront yourself. It's not possible in all, slightly, but not to that degree. It's more subtle. But
here,
the
drama,
we'll
find out.
What?
I said one day we'll find out. And to me, that just shows that there's something wrong, is that we just don't have the memory. I mean, that to me, that's like a big clue, they wipe your memory before you come down here. And then the other thing, with everything having to feed off each other just to survive, to me, that's like, what kind of creator would do that? But I guess it's all for the drama of the movie. Or if it's not really real, if it's a dream or an illusion, and it's impermanent, it just changes form and shape all the time, then I don't know. I mean, when you cry over a character in a movie because he died or suffered or whatever, did that character really die or suffer? No, it was just an actor that was pretending. So I mean,
yeah, it's because you identify.
Yeah, yes. It's the attachment that we were talking about earlier. So it's something to avoid, in my opinion. Especially the attachment of love is a big one. But the near-death experiences often come back down because of that. Maybe their wife is an alcoholic, or their husband's an alcoholic, or something like that, and they feel they need to go back and help them, like that character.
And marry the next alcoholic.
Yeah. and the other thing is, like, a lot of these people that down here may not even have souls. They may just be like background characters, or they're called NPCs, non-playing characters. And if it's all just a simulation or a game or whatever, I mean, you keep coming back down, and you're the only one that's freaking alive. It's just a stupid game, and they're all laughing at you.
But it's not only a simulation. That is also part. When somebody strictly comes from that perception, I have a feeling they already have been integrated into that hive mind. You know what I mean? If the only thing that they can see is a computer simulation, then that is telling me,
I must be simulated in the hive mind, because I do think this is a matrix or a computer simulation. I believe there's something outside of that matrix or computer simulation, which I guess is what you're talking about. But,
of course, but you also have the natural realm.
yeah, I don't know.
I'm not saying there are not holographic overlays. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah,
but,
I don't know. One of the things I don't know about how much of this.
But it has something to do with diminishing this planet and diminishing humanity. Yeah, if you strictly come from that point of view of, oh, it's all a simulation.
Yeah, there are some who believe that, you know, like the Garden of Eden or whatever, that there was a pure, real creation, and then that it got hacked into by the fallen angels or the Anunnaki, the Demiurge, whatever. So a lot of people think that they hacked into this and with the AI, and that there's a true component of spirit, that which would be our light that is within us. That would be the spiritual component. So yeah. I don't know. I don't know all the answers. Like I say, it's up to everybody else to decide for themselves. I just kind of research and gather information and put it out there. And,
yeah, but it's, for me, I have fun just brainstorming and exchanging ideas.
Yeah.
I like to go out on a limb. I don't pretend to have everything right. I guess hardly anybody has. But doing these thought experiments, that is, yeah, that's interesting. I like that.
Me too. Unfortunately, I don't know anybody, well, maybe one or two people here in Austin that I can talk to about any of this. You know, it's just a handful of people that email me and people that interview me. And it seems like 99.9% of the world around me is just oblivious to it all. It doesn't want to, you know, talk about it much.
Yeah, welcome to the club.
Yeah. I'm not alone, right?
No, it's, I had James True on, and he said during the interview, the more I know, the more I understand, the less social I become.
Yeah.
Yeah. I understand completely why.
You don't want that attachment. I mean, like sometimes I feel like I should be more compassionate and have more empathy for people, but then yet that's, you know, as a Buddhist thinking, you know, it's like you want to withdraw from that and not have that attachment. So you need to be sort of kind of zoom out a little bit from that, you know. Otherwise, you're just curled up in a corner in a fetal position and crying, you know. That doesn't do anybody any good.
Yeah, but compassion is different from pity.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you have pity, then two individuals are suffering.
Yeah, well, that's the thing about a lot of the near-death experiencers that say that, you know, you come here to learn and to grow, but in order to do that, there, you know, people have to suffer, right? And then the person that comes down to help that other person that's suffering, to help them learn to grow, and now they're suffering because they're, you know, connected to the other person, and that, you know, it's just, the whole thing doesn't make sense to me. If there really was a super intelligent divine God creator, that you would think you would have a better system for learning than that, you know. Like, I mean, technically all you have to do is touch his finger and everything would be downloaded to you immediately. So why send a new soul down to earth for millions of lifetimes where you're, you know, living in trees because you're afraid the tiger is going to like rip your limb off you? It's just, I don't know, that's insane.
Yeah, it is.
They say the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, right? And expecting different results. So
yeah, especially when your mind is wiped and you have no clue what you were supposed to do.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, that was great. Thank you for that. Are you finished with this one?
Yeah, yes,
okay.
Yes. Everything.
Then you can stop the sharing.
Okay. here we go. Sharing stopped. It's nice to share, though.
Yeah. So yeah, that was wonderful. Thank you for that presentation. And
Thank you.
it was entertaining to go out on a limb with you.
That's what I do. That's what I'm here for. I like to speculate and philosophize about a lot of different scenarios. I don't pretend to know, like, oh, this is the truth and here it is. You better listen and do it. Because I really don't know the truth any more than the next person. So.
Yeah, and that is what I always say. All interviews are practically starting points to do your own research and to go out on a limb yourself.
I couldn't agree more. Well, thanks for having me on. I don't know. I don't have too many outlets to share my research, and it does help keep me motivated and give me push me into keep doing what I'm doing. Otherwise, I probably just get discouraged. And like I took my website down, like when I first put it up, like in 2003, 2004, I got like one email from somebody, and I think it was from Val Valerian, but basically nobody cared. Nobody asked me for interviews. And so I got discouraged and just took it down. But then
but that shows you that the time wasn't right.
The time wasn't right. And then when we got close to 2012, I'm like, well, if there's something to the Mayan calendar, I better put this book out there for some people. And I've had it up since then. So there's a lot more interest in it now. A lot more.
Yeah. And I will have you back, certainly, after a time. Yeah. And so, again, thank you very much for coming. This was it, guys. Night Flight for today. Take good care of yourself. Have a great time, and we all see you next time. Bye-bye.